So, 15 years ago, I was pregnant with our fourth child. And I, at that time, had been going through a lot of questions I had about what I had been taught to believe. I was 30, almost 31, I would say. And we were at the time attending a Assembly of God church that was very, what I didn't really know at the time, word of faith, prosperity gospel, had really infiltrated that particular church. And I had been raised in charismatic churches. All this is important to this. I believe in the power of God, that He is a miracle worker. So it was tough for me to reconcile what I knew to be true about God versus things that were being said to me that didn't seem to hold water according to Scripture. But if you were raised in it, it's very, very difficult to set aside core beliefs in order to objectively review what the Word has to say. So I went to Sunday to church on a Sunday, and went into the nursery. I think my third daughter, she was a toddler at the time, or something like that. And I went into the nursery, and I was, sitting in this little mom's lounge area, and this woman came in, and she was nursing a baby, something like that. And she handed me this book, Supernatural Childbirth, as you may have heard. And she went on to explain how she'd had, I don't know how many kids, 5, 6, 7 kids, and never experienced pain in any of her natural childbirths and deliveries, and how this was because she believed that she was no longer under the curse, that those things weren't for her as a believer, and that the reason women were experiencing pain was because they didn't have faith of those things. And I listened and just really wasn't sure what to make of it. She handed me the book and was like, "You need to read this. You need to seek the Lord about it." And I did. I took it home. I read it. I was deeply troubled. You see, I'd been raised to know and love God. I definitely went through a rebellious phase when I was a teenager, and was just really working through some hard things, but God rescued me, and that's a whole other story for another day. So I really wrestled. I actually talked to my dad a lot during that season. A lot. I would call and just try to tear apart some of these things and look at them, look at the Word. There's so much scripture they use, all out of context, but I know that now. But at the time, it was really convincing, and I couldn't reconcile, though, that all these Christian people that I knew loved Jesus so deeply had pretty typical natural births that were, to be described, painful. There were a few that did not say it was, but for the most part, it's a pretty common experience for women over thousands of years. So I thought, could all of these people just lack faith? Is that really the missing component? Because I've heard this so much in the churches I grew up in, or people I knew, that the reason they were suffering or struggle or a lack of healing was because of a lack of faith. So I spent a lot of time praying, and I finally, all the way up to the birth, this is where I landed. I was like, I knew that the Lord was capable of giving me that experience. I knew that He could. I didn't know that He would. So I surrendered to whatever God chose to do, but told Him that I had faith and knew that He could. And if that is what He wanted, I was willing to accept it. And then I went into labor. And for the first so many hours, I was 40 weeks, 5 days. I had a real big baby. They didn't know how big, but boy, was she big. I went into labor, and it hurt, but it wasn't terrible. I spent a good deal of time worshiping the Lord. I put on my worship music, and honestly, worshiping and doing those things really were wonderful. That really helped me to be centered on the Lord. It honestly helped with managing the discomfort, more than anything that I did. But guess what? I stalled. I was 6 centimeters. I stalled for 9 hours. My body went into transition, but she wouldn't move. It was excruciating. And it was during these hours that nobody else knew. Nobody else knew what I was experiencing. Only God did, because I could not articulate to people the spiritual upheaval that was happening in the midst of my birth experience. Because as I was laying in bed, exhausted from being up essentially over 24 hours, all I could hear was what I truly believe was just the voice of the enemy in my flesh, just whispering in, you just don't trust God enough. This is your fault. God is not here for you. This is not what he wants for you. And I have never felt so broken. Never. It was horrible. I was crying. And of course, my midwife and, my support team just assumed that it was because it was intense, because it was. But it was much more than that. I was being shaken on a deep level about what I believed and what I believed about God and what he believed about me. It was horrible. My husband leaned over and he just whispered in my ear a prayer. It was very simple and very small and very quiet. No one else heard it but me. And he said, Lord, I know that you created her for this moment. I know that you're with her. I need you to empower her to do what you've called her to do. Give her strength. And that was it. And I'll tell you what, I sat up. I looked at my midwife. I told her, you need to break my water. Which, as a doula of now 20 years, I knew at the time there's no literature that suggests that is a good thing to do. It's not tied to an increase, like a shorter duration of labor, should I say. But I just knew in my heart that is what needed to be done. I don't really have anything else other than that. I just knew that's what needed to be done. So she looked at me. She said, are you sure? I said, yes, I'm 100% certain you need to do this. So she broke my water. I got in the tub and promptly got out because it was terrible. And she sat me on a birth stool, and I had 3 pushes and my daughter was out. It was less than 15 minutes for all of that. Following that experience, birthing an 11-pound 4-ounce baby girl, it took me a long time to process what God allowed. But I'm so thankful for it, because I was already pulling away from a lot of these beliefs that were core beliefs to my faith, but just wasn't sure how to exegete as well at the time to be able to stand firm on what I now know is true. I'm so thankful God did not give me what I asked for, because I would still be trapped in word of faith heresy and prosperity gospel. I would be trapped. I would have believed that my faith was the linchpin. I would have been stuck there. So I share this to encourage anyone that could be in that position. It's actually one of the major reasons why I post about these things when I post about the Word of Faith, heresy, and prosperity gospel, and some of the people that are in those movements, the things that they say and what they preach, and how it damages believers. I think it is one of the worst things that we are dealing with currently, especially in America, that's being farmed out as what Christianity is. And if I can help anyone by the grace of God to get out of that, I will. I'll do it. So that is my story as far as that particular aspect of it. I hope it blesses others. It's now 10 minutes in. I'll talk to you soon.